Hello, all. It is such a pleasure to be here. You know when your heart's beating because you're so excited? You all make me nervous. And I think the reason why is because this is the heart of the work. You all are doing the heart of the work. And what I'm here to share today is very much what Mark had shared. I'm here to talk about lessons learned. Lessons learned by the teachers in my life, which consists of, for me, starting 20 years ago as a classroom teacher, as a bilingual teacher, my students. My students are my greatest teachers. I have some students in this room that are amazing teachers right now. My colleagues like Mark and Hallie, that has deeply transformed and shaped the way in which I look at children. Most of all, I should actually shift so you can see the image. Most of all, these 5 teachers in this room. For the last 2 years, I've had the privilege to learn with 5 education specialists. I go into their rooms and we co-teach together. We co-teach and when we work with children classified with a mild, mod, or severe disability, with the idea that much of the world tells us that some kids can do math and some kids can't. And these 5 teachers and their children show us that within the word impossible is the word I am possible. So what I'm going to share with you today are what I've learned from them, that they've helped me see the things that I did not see, that the myths in front of us that blinds us from seeing our children's brilliance and hides the truth about our kids. I'm going to start off with a story, because a story's got to start with a story, right? I'm trying to be really good because Mark told me I can't walk around too much. I like to walk around the room like it's a park. Trying real hard. You all know H.G. Wells. In our room, descendants were from Hawaii. Shaka, you're like, I know H.G. Wells. 2 people. You all know H.G. Wells. Let me tell you. This man was a time traveler. In the early 1900s, he wrote The Time Machine. Now I'm like, yeah, Shakas, I know who he is. War of the World. Shaka, you're like, right? So this amazing individual also wrote a very short story, 4 pages long, called The Country of the Blind. Okay. Anybody know that story? Look at one person. This is exciting. Okay. As a math educator, I'm going to read you like a short synopsis of the story. Because I'm a math educator, I'm going to read it. It's a very short synopsis. So the story of the country of the blind is why in the country of the blind is a one-eyed man not king. So the protagonist is a mountaineer named Nunez. While attempting to climb an unconquered mountain in Ecuador, Nunez slips and falls down the side of the mountain. At the end of his descent, he finds a valley, cut off from the rest of the world. Unbeknown to Nunez, he had discovered the fabled country called the country of the blind. Upon discovering that everyone is blind, Nunez began reciting to himself the proverb, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I come with knowledge. I can see. I have experiences they don't have. I'm coming to lead. Right? It makes sense. Ooh. I'll share it all first. He arrives at the town and he's disoriented and confused. The environment was organized such that the knowledge, skills, and language and resources that he came with was of little value. How can that be? He has an additional sense that everybody around him didn't have. And the reason why is because the community chose to develop, the environment itself was organized such that his knowledge and skills were of little value. The community chose to work when it was cool. You know it gets hot in the day, right? So they slept in the day and they worked at night. As they worked in the dark, our hero can do nothing but stumble about. There was no light. None of the buildings had been built with windows, and there was no lighting of any kind. Nunez talked about light, sight, colors, which are entirely alien to everyone else. Everyone thought he was mad and delusional. So in the country of the blind, why is a one-eyed man not king? I stop and pause there because the story is not about the country of the blind. It's really about education. We are all different. Our kids are different. When does a difference become a difference that counts? When does a difference become one that allows us to be considered smart, intelligent, incompetent, and disabled? And my main argument here is children are not incompetent. Children are not disabled. Our system does so. What we need to shift our eyes on is moving away from fixing children to fixing our environment. Let me give you an example. This came from an 11-year-old, also with a label disability, as I was talking about, and that's my 11-year-old. You know, I'm trying to talk about instructional design. The problem is a problem in instructional design. She goes, oh, I know what you mean. I don't know if you can see it. You can't see it, so let me tell you. On the pencil, it says, let me read it. Too cool to do drugs. Shaka, y'all remember those pencils, right? Okay, we all do. So this is an example of design fail, the 11-year-old tells me. Okay, it sounds great because you want a reminder every time you're holding your pencil to not do drugs. Oh, sorry. Okay, as we start to sharpen the pencil, what does it start to say? Okay. Look at it closely. Cool to do drugs. Do drugs, then just straight out drugs. I gotta call that out because an 11-year-old pointed that out to me, right? But I think the part of this talk is really about, we gotta look at our instructional design. We've been looking at the kids for so long. They are who they are. You can't return them or change them. You can't wash them and they'll be someone else. They are who they are. Our eyes need to be on the instructional design. And what we really need to look at, and this is from Vygotsky. How brilliant was he in 1929, right? We still need to look back at Vygotsky. Vygotsky, in his early development, human development, he actually focused on disability studies. It was hidden from most of the world because within Russia, they were engaging in eugenics. So much of his work in that field was hidden. And what he argues is when we look at individuals, it's not about those who are able or disabled that's the problem. It's the way in which we position normacy. The way in which we consider some people are considered normal and some people are not. And what really drives that are myths. And these colleagues in the room, particularly these teachers, they've helped me see myths that blinds me. It blinds me from seeing what's in front of me. So let me go over just 3 main myths. 1, some of us are born math people. Okay, you all math people, you all know, right? I'm walking around, always at the airport, and I'm reading like an algebra textbook, right? Every time there's always somebody comes up to me. What do you do? I teach teachers math. And they always go, oh. And they literally shudder, their shoulders go up. Oh, I hate math. I'm not a math person. Shaka, you're like, yeah, I get that all the time. So that's an example of this belief that we call fixed mindset. Some of us are math people and some of us are not. And we think that it's rare. All of us in the room, we're like, we ain't those people. But many of our kids are, and oftentimes we think our kids are. What we found out, this idea of some of us being math people and some of us not, causes a lot of math anxiety. And we found out that it's actually a lot. 2 out of 10, 20 out of 100, right? 200 out of 1,000. many, many people, when I sit next to them, always on the plane, like flying back from Monterey this time for an hour, my colleague next to me was sharing his traumas about math. He'll say, gosh, I remember those time tests. Hey, I had 1 minute to do 100 problems. I was always that kid that prevented the rest of my class from getting that ice cream party. Hey. You think about that. Are you that teacher? Hey. I was once. I've done that before. Hey. Head in shame. Hey. And then they start talking about fractions. It's like fractions don't make any sense. It's so weird. And then why are we always looking for X? It's always right there. And then they start telling me, we have to memorize all these rules. We all remember this one. Ours is not the reason why. We just invert and multiply. And they go, then I get it confused. Which one do I invert? Which one do I multiply? The argument is, we need to move away from some people being math people or not, and build from true life. If I just said, here's 6 cups, and in my household, because I'm making rice for my family, I only have half cups. How many half cups would it take to make 6 cups? I asked my 7-year-old, she's like, Mama, that's easy. Half? You need 2 of them to make 1 whole. So it's just 2 times 6, 12. The kid is in 2nd grade. It's better than the other one, right? Then, let me give you another example, because I have 2 kids. The other kid likes chocolate. And she knows we're trying to eat healthy. 6 candy bars. I'm only going to eat half a day before the ants eat them. How many days can it last? So what's the truth? What of my colleagues, these brilliant teachers, who I often get in the car after being in their classroom and I have to sit there for 10 minutes because I'm so blown away by how they're helping me see. They've shown me that children, regardless of ability status, every one of us, including you and me and every kid in our classroom, are all math people. We are all math people. We are not broken. Schools need to build their math to align with the way in which we see math in real life. Thank you, awesome teachers in the room. Myth number 2. Knowledge, you're going to be like, knowledge is situated in our brain. This is the one where my kids are like, that's weird, Mama. Your brain's right here. It is right here. I argue that's not true. Let me give you an example, and it's really cute. Oops, sorry. Make sure I get the right name. This is Jason. Nothing better than telling a story around peas. Okay. So Melissa Brennan, raise your hand. This is Melissa Brennan. Okay. She is awesome. She sends me a video in the middle of the day, right? She's like, you got to check this out. You know it's been raining nonstop, right? So it's raining, your kids can't go outside, they're having lunch, Melissa's having lunch with her kids. And you know, Jason's like 4, just turned 5, in an SDC classroom, okay, classified with autism and ADHD, not mainstreamed. The kid's sitting there going, Miss Brennan, how many peas do I have? How many peas do I have? And look what he does with his peas. Can I play the video? What, let me? Oh, this is so fancy. Let me show you his peas.
I make group of 10 and group of 3 is 15.
That's right. So what do you say? 10?
10
plus
3 equals 13.
Yay! Jeez. Look at that. It's like a 10 frame.
I'm making assumptions. I assume Melissa didn't make the 10 frames for him, right? He did it by himself. So I think this is a perfect video because the kid was not born making 10 frames with his peas, right? He wasn't born going, yeah, my peas should always be set 5 and 5, right? I hope not, maybe. That knowledge came from the classroom. That knowledge came from what Melissa was doing every day to build numerical fluency as that child was learning to count. As that child was engaging in not just workbook and textbooks, but counting real things. It wasn't rote knowledge. It was, let's look at the world around us and figure out how many things are in the world. So that Jason on a rainy day decides, I'm going to figure out how many peas I have. And Jason, being so awesome, was like, I wonder how many peas do I have in all? So the investigation continues. And I just got to call out, check out those 20, you see the 10 and 10? Look at how he does his 6 as 5 and 1. That is the beginning of numerical reasoning, problem solving, sense making. And it didn't come from him at birth. No one's born making P's and 10s. As far as I know, because my kid ate a lot of P's and didn't do that. It came from this. These are pictures of Melissa's classroom as they're counting real objects. And I just have to call out, you can't see that on the paper. It says 100 is equal to 93 plus 7. Not 93 plus 7 equals 100. Melissa intentionally writes her equations in different ways, so her students, even in her classroom at an early grade, sees that these two expressions are equivalent, building that algebraic reasoning earlier on. Can we just give a round of applause for Melissa in this room? Because we all want Jason in our classroom next year. Okay? I'm gonna bring some peas next time I go to the classroom. So what's the truth? Notice how the rest of the words are blurry? Because we have to zoom in on the truth to help us see from above. Knowledge is not situated in our minds. It's situated and built upon the tools and resources around us. It's built upon the resources and tools and real life experiences each of you bring to your students. It comes from you. It comes from their family. It comes from their real life. Thank you for doing that. But what I'm also asking us is to see that knowledge is not just situated in our social environments, it's also situated in our ideologies and our beliefs. When we look at factors, it's from John Hattie. When we look at all the factors, not about the child, not about the teacher, but teacher-student interactions, one thing that impacts children the most is teacher labeling. How we label a child, high, low, that has the greatest correlation to their performance. And I pause there because I want us to think about that. When I read that, it hit me in the gut. Because in my life, there's been moments when I've said, that kid's high, that kid's low. And by me saying that, even to myself, I've impacted that child's performance. Myth number 3. We must figure out our students' problems and figure out how to treat it. These slides are originally from Dr. Mark Ellis, who's helped me really look deeply at the history of mathematics. Just 2 days ago, I was at the birthplace of IQ testing, the intelligence quotient. It was created in the early 1900s because all of a sudden, a bunch of really powerful people had to provide education for everyone. And you know what really rich, powerful people have to give something to everyone? They all want their kids to have the best. So what they created was the IQ quotient, okay, the IQ test, and it was intentionally created to separate children based on race and class. Go home, look up the research. I didn't know this until Mark Ellis told me that the creation of IQ testing, which is the birthplace of SATs, birthplace of GREs, and all the testing that we use, was intentionally created to show some kids are better than others. And if we were to think about that, that was also the birthplace of differential instruction. So the birthplace of general education, special education, gifted, special pupils came at that time. And we can go, that was 100 years ago, Cathery. The world is a better place. We now have Disneyland, right? Schools are more segregated now than before desegregation. And if we look at how children are segregated in their classrooms, it is separated by race and class. So what I'm asking for is a shift of paradigm. For us to move away from looking at our children as a site of intervention. So moving away from the medical model, our children is not a disease. They're not the cold. They are not the flu. Moving away from the idea that I need to look at a kid, diagnose their problem, and consider an intervention. What I want us to consider is target the curriculum as the reform. Every year, even with my 2 kids, I just got 2 at home. My husband will often say I'm the 3rd kid. Just the 3 of us, the range is huge. We are not alike. I bet in your class, you're like, I feel like my kids, the range is getting bigger every single year. If you know that, we should just account for differences. We should design in mind that there is no norm. Because when we consider the norm turns out to be often us. We want them to be like us. There is no norm. There is no average kid. You're going to have a diverse group. And what we know is diversity is beautiful. The way in which Jason does his P's, the way in which Amelia does the things in her classroom, we are all different. And that difference is awesome. I do not want 100 me's in the classroom. That would be scary. Thank goodness for diversity. So what I argue for is our focus should be, instead of differentiation individual child, how can we shift our curriculum to account for how every one of us look at the world slightly different, and we may engage in mathematics slightly different, and that these differences are beautiful. It allows us to look at mathematics and the world in different ways, and that allows us to be more successful. Theory to practice. Let me show you just 3 quick examples. 1, our curriculum should build on the idea that every student has potential. How do we do that? 1, teach towards powerful math. I always feel like as a teacher, I'm like on the hamster wheel. I'm running as fast as I can, but the wheel ain't moving. So if I'm going to spend time on something, it's got to be powerful. So it can't be that. I can do that 1,000,000 times. It should be this. Our knowledge should be always grounded on what's relevant, on the mathematics that matters. 2, we have to in our hearts believe that every child is a sense maker. Every child can reason. Every child can problem solve. And if anybody questions that, they just need to walk into your classroom and you can show them that it's true. Because we know that what we believe about our students is the greatest indicator of their performance. And lastly, we need to see that learning is not individual, it's about a community. These 2 teachers that's going to come up after, I always have to pause a little bit because they almost bring me to tears. So many times in their rooms, we've had to pause because we have to stop ourselves to want to intervene. And when we pause and we allow our students to take the lead, they solve math in ways that we do not anticipate. And when we don't intervene, they help each other. They allow their kids to be in the front of the classroom to grapple with the mathematics and to help us see things we don't see. And what they've also shown me is that we also need to build community. If we want our kids to, we do too. So what I'm asking for is not just a change in curriculum, it's a social movement. in social movements, when we think about Rosa Parks, it wasn't just her alone sitting back there because she was tired, right? She was actively involved in NAACP. And when that occurred, 10,000 Montgomery bus riders walked for 381 days. So what I'm hoping for is that we can continue to build community to push for a social movement for change. Thank you.